The pure and infinite consciousness alone thinks of itself as the jiva and as the mind, and then believes itself to be the body. So here we're talking about mind instead of ethereal body. Which inclines me to believe or to think that what's called the ethereal body is no more than the mind, it's no more than the imagination. So there seems to be a direct causal, there seems to be a direct condensation, if you like, from the absolute to the physical body. This is just a way of looking at things. We've got the absolute, then we've got the mind, and then we've got notions of physicality. When this dreamlike fantasy is prolonged, this long dream feels like reality. Yeah, one of the arguments we could make for this ordinary waking reality being the main reality is it's the one we keep coming back to, isn't it? We can fall asleep, we can have lots of dreams, but then we wake up and we're back here. And even if you have out-of-body experiences, or you're an adept astral projectioner, this is a reality you come back to, is it not? But even within dreams though, well, before I say this, I mean, this reality seems real because of memories. We've got these memories of what's happened before. This is reality we keep coming back to. But you can get this in a dream as well, can't you? Have you ever had a friend in a dream that you don't know in real life? And that friend in the dream you'll have memories about. There are dream memories. You'll have memories of meeting that friend before. You might even wake up and you're dreaming. So the arguments by which we might suggest that this is somehow the anchored reality, the real reality, the reality that we always come back to, it could be applied to a dream as well. So but it does seem like quite a long dream, so this is what gives it its sense of reality. It is both real and unreal. Because it is perceived, it appears to be real. But because of inherent contradiction, it is unreal. Yes, if you really start looking into things, if you start applying what the Hindus call vichara, which is inquiry, or even direct observation, then things don't hang together very well. And the nature of perception is one of these. The scientific story of perception just, it's a non sequitur, it doesn't follow. The idea of perception is that we experience things through the senses. What are the senses? The senses are what are technically called transducers. They turn one kind of energy into another. They turn all the types of energy that are supposedly going on into electricity. The senses turn things into electrical impulses. And then somehow, somewhere, these electrical impulses become the whole phenomenal universe. It's quite a non sequitur, but this doesn't seem to bother those who consider themselves to be scientific. So there is inherent contradiction here, and probably a lot more if we care to look. The mind is sentient because it is based on consciousness. When viewed as something apart from the consciousness, it is inert and deluded. when there is perception, the mind takes on the role of the object of perception. So it's actually talking about perception here. When we perceive something, we assume we're perceiving something inert. We assume we're perceiving an object. But this is the mind taking on the role of the object. There's no difference essentially between awareness and the object of awareness. When you're aware of something, does that mean that there's awareness and there's the object? There's only the object then, that's all. So the awareness, which is mind, becomes the object. There isn't awareness plus the object, there's only the object. So this is the mind becoming inert, and the idea that that object is something separate and inert is described here as a deluded idea. So when the mind, when there is perception, the mind, or when there's the idea of perception, the mind takes on the role of the object of perception, but not in reality. Even as when it is perceived as such, the bracelet is seen, though the truth is that it is gold. So when you perceive the bracelet as a bracelet, that's what you see, but it's actually gold. So it's saying that this gold, this is like how when we perceive objects, we're thinking of them as objects, but they're really just the mind or consciousness. Because Brahman alone is all this, even what is inert is pure consciousness. But all of us, from me down to the rock, are indefinable, neither inert nor sentient. Inert, being inert, or that's inertia, and sentience are just two ways of classifying things. It's one of the modes of the cognitive process. There can be no apprehension of two completely different things. So what this is saying is, how could mind apprehend matter? How can sentient mind apprehend insentient matter? The argument here is that they must be of the same nature in order for one to apprehend the other, in order for perception to take place. Only when there is similarity between the subject and object is perception possible. Concerning what is indefinable and whose existence is not certain, inert and sentient are only words with no substance. In the mind, the subject is believed to be sentient and the object is said to be inert. Thus, caught in delusion, the jiva hangs around. Yes, so you've got the sentient jiva and you've got inert objects, and the jiva then builds up relationships with these objects, and that's what keeps it attached, it keeps it hanging around in samsara. In truth, this duality itself is the creation of the mind, a hallucination. It's part of the cognitive process which is inherent in consciousness. Of course, we cannot determine with certainty that such a hallucination exists either. So we can't even say it's a hallucination. So again, saying it's a hallucination or reality is another way of dividing things up. The infinite consciousness alone is. When this illusory division is not seen for what it is, there is the arising of the false egotism. This is our bundle of likes and dislikes, what we go chasing after and what we want to avoid. But when the mind inquires into its own nature, this division disappears. There is realization of the one infinite consciousness, and one attains great bliss. Well, you certainly attain relief anyway. It's quite a relief to let go of all these things that you've been chasing after and worrying about. Especially if you're a spiritual seeker and you're looking for spiritual knowledge.